today I'm going to be talking about contributing to WordPress without writing code. So my name is Jenny and I work at HumanMade, and historically I am a web developer, which means for my day job I do write code, but as I'll tell you later, code is not what I do in open source. So to kick things off, I would like to know what you all do with WordPress. So if you want to just shout out things that you do with WordPress. Are you a user? Are you a business person? Do you run an agency? Are you, writing content? What are you doing with those? Are you designing it? Anyone want to go first?
User.
You're a user?
User.
Designer.
Designer?
I haven't used it for 5 years right now, but I'm
It's changed.
going to get into it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has.
Any developers?
Yeah, I do.
Development, making themes. Cool. So hands up if you are a WordPress user. That's most of you. Fantastic. Because this is what the talk is aimed at, so making sure I'm in the right audience. Hands up if you have contributed to WordPress. So only 3 people have put their hands up, but actually by being here today, you are contributing to the WordPress ecosystem. You're being part of a community. And communities don't really work if no one shows up. So actually you are all part of the WordPress community and you are all contributing to the whole WordPress ecosystem. But with the WordPress ecosystem, unlike anything else, there's a lot of jargon that goes on around the community. So what I like to do at the beginning of any of my talks, regardless of where I am, regardless if I'm doing a tech talk or regardless if I'm doing a person-related talk, I like to just set the tone of what I mean by the things I say. So first and foremost, WordPress. What do I mean by WordPress? When I talk about WordPress, I'm talking about the content management system, the thing you download. Alright? When I'm talking about WordPress, I like to make sure that you understand that WordPress.com is not the same as WordPress.org. And to make that clear, WordPress.com is a hosted solution of the WordPress content management system. So it's like Wix or Squarespace in that sense. You don't need to worry about hosting, you just use a solution on the internet, go in your browser, Bob's your uncle. It's owned by a company called Automatic, who are very prevalent in the WordPress global space. So you might hear, WordPress and Automatic all the time, but WordPress.com, and the .com is a very important part of that conversation, is owned by a company called Automatic. If you've heard of GitHub, that's what it's like there. Well, if you talk about WordPress.org, and when I'm talking about WordPress, because I do not work for Automatic, I am talking about WordPress.org. And WordPress.org is where the open source project of the software we're using and we're talking about today lives. So on there is the open source software, and that's the thing you can download. That's the thing that you get to put anywhere, modify it any way you want, and do whatever you want with it. It has a GPL license which allows you to do whatever you want with it, which is quite an important part of the open source mentality. If you want to know more about legals and open source, I am not your person, Heather is. She might charge you though, so yeah. So the interesting thing about WordPress.org is that it's made by people like you and me. People who are using it, people who, have issues with it, trying to find how to fix the problems. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, is trying to encourage you to think about contributing back to the project, because ultimately it's all volunteer run. Some volunteers are paid by companies as a sponsorship, so they are given time to go and contribute to that project. My time is 100% contributed to open source, not only WordPress, but other open source projects. But everyone in WordPress.org is considered a volunteer. So no one is paid by WordPress.org to do anything. And so all the organizers of this meetup, Jeremy, Sean, and Heather included, are all volunteers who are running this event, which is why it has that mentality of a grassroots startup. When we talk about WordPress, sometimes you'll hear people talk about the foundation. Now, WordPress Foundation manages the trademark of WordPress, and in short of it, that is basically all they really do, and they don't really do much more than that. There's a few other things they do, but it's really boring and doesn't really affect most people. So as far as we're concerned, WordPress Foundation equals trademark people. So if you use the trademark of WordPress wrongly, they will point it out to you. And usually that's because someone else has pointed it out to them. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about Central, WordCamp Central. And WordCamp Central really is a location of where all WordCamp events information is. So if you go to that URL, that address, wordcamp.org, you'll go on that website and you'll see there's a map and there's lots and lots of different pins all over the world. There's about 130 annually. And WordCamps are actually kind of like this meetup, but for a day. So before the session started, I mentioned WordCamp Manchester and stuff like that. The kind of conferencey hangout events where WordPress lovers and WordPress learners and WordPress users and WordPress builders get together and talk more WordPress. It's like a meta WordPress thing.
How does that work then? Because if you get people who are really dedicated and know their stuff, and you get people like me who are basically novices, how does that work whereby you've got that very mixed audience to make it interesting to everybody?
We pretend it's a house party and everyone gets to have a hangout together.
That's alright.
Yeah, so different events run it differently. There are some events across the world where they will just do open rooms and people will declare what they want to discuss. And people who are interested in those discussions will go to those rooms. That style in the tech world is called a bar camp. WordCamp Manchester usually is 2 tracks, and a lot of WordCamps do it more conferencey style, which will be like a general track, a technical track, where the general track might talk about things that are more generalistic to WordPress, more aimed at WordPress content writers, users, and people who are not comfortable with code, and then there's one which is more comfortable with code. The reality of WordPress is that we like to invite everyone to the party, so we try and encourage people to do different things. There are some WordCamps across the world which are specializing in particular areas of WordPress, whether that's business, design, accessibility, publishers, if it's a different niche. There's some developer camps as well, but they will upright say this is what they're talking about. And usually in those kind of events, they will still have different levels of talks. So they will have things that are beginner level and more advanced. And so they try and encourage people to, if you want to try and learn about these things, one of my favorite things about the WordPress community is how you can ask a question and people are willing to help you work that out. Sometimes they might say, after this point, you know, I've given you a lot of free advice, you know, come and see me afterwards if you want to do some business with me. Sure. But a lot of people will be like, out of the goodwill of the WordPress community, give advice to a certain point. And basically somehow I managed to make that my job. So all my advice today is free, don't worry about that. Okay, next piece of jargon information, global community team. This is where I contribute to WordPress. And the global community team, what they do is they try and help all the WordCamp organizers, because these conferences are run by our volunteers the same way the Meetups are, they're just bigger versions of the Meetup. And all the Meetup organizers to do what they do best, which is organize events and help share how to organize events. We all learn from each other and we try and like match people together, get mentors, and learn best practices from the large range of events across the world. There are over 600 meetups like this one across the world for WordPress. So that's pretty amazing. So when I talk about global community team, we're the group of volunteers who look after the global level community stuff that's going on. Any other questions so far?
Yeah, I have. It's kind of off track, but it's still related. You mentioned hosting earlier. Who's the best hosters? I mean, I hear Bluehost.
That's a kettle of fish.
And then
let's
agencies
just park
want a
that.
whack.
Have we got a pen? We'll put these kind of questions. We can come back to that one.
Okay.
So who's the best? I'm going to put this in abbreviations. Hoster, because that's a how long is a piece of string question.
Well, no, it's all because who does security checking of new modules, new things, new code?
Yeah, I can cover that as well.
I'll tell you, if we can throw it in, can we talk about copyright issues in coding?
Copyright and coding. I'm not the best person for that, but we can have a discussion on it.
Yeah. Good.
Coding. Okay. Good thing we have a whiteboard. Okay, right, next. So why would you want to contribute to WordPress? I mean, you already have the software that you can download, so why would you might want to do this? And the reality of it is, with an open source piece of software, the open source software will be as good as we make it, as everyone in the ecosystem makes it. So if you're going to take this, you also have to give it all back, otherwise there'll be no one to maintain this. And then you'll have issues which have happened in the tech industry where they'll just delete the project and no one is there to maintain it. And that is a prevalent issue of open source in general. But with WordPress, we try and really encourage people to give back so that we constantly have this stream of all hands on deck where we can have people helping out at all times. And there's different ways of doing that. At HumanMade, which is the company I work at, we have 6 core committers and they all get, I think it's 20% of their time dedicated to open source. So they're taking off agency work and we donate that time back to the open source community. Because ultimately, not me, my boss has built a business on WordPress. If we don't look after the thing that is actually making us money, then we're doing a disservice to our business. And so that's why the company also decided to give me 100% of my time back to open source, because we don't just use WordPress, we use a lot of other open source projects. And they all need people to help out. So when you're running a company, at the beginning, it does make sense to concentrate on your business because obviously you want the business to succeed. But when you're at a point where you're thinking about, what can I do at this time? There actually are initiatives in government where you can do R&D and get like tax rebates back and stuff like that. I heard the operations team talking about it, but I don't actually know how it works. As a developer myself, I have made plenty of excuses why not to contribute back to open source. So how many people here have thought about contributing and decided not to do it? A few of you, cool. It's cool that you have put your hand up. That's the first path of like acknowledging that you haven't done it yet. That's good. So it might be something along the lines of, I don't want to code when I come home, I'm not a developer, or I don't know anything. These are things I've literally run through my mind so many times before I started doing it, and a lot of the time it's just like you don't know what to do or where to start. Like you kind of sometimes have this mentality, you know that you want to give back, you might have an issue, but you just don't know what to do. And the thing that changed my life was in 2013, I went to WordCamp London. So it's one of these conference style events that is where they talk all about WordPress. It was in London, and as a northerner at the time, I didn't really want to go to London because it's always expensive. The tube, I never understood how to get on. I always go the wrong way, at least 2 stops before I have to get off and go back on the other side of the track. I just was like, why would I want to go to London? So I didn't go because, I'm a happy Mancunian. And then they announced that they were doing a contributor day. And I went to this contributor day. They had advertised it as this day where people learn how to give back to the project. And I had tried this myself before at home and found it hard to do. So I was like, okay, maybe this would be a good reason for me to go along and find out how to actually deal with this open source thing and give something back. And what I learned there in a nutshell was that every single person can contribute to WordPress. There is not a single person who can't contribute to WordPress, which is a very bold statement to make, I know. But if you want to come up to me and be like, no, you're wrong, I will accept that challenge and find you a home in the WordPress community. So feel free to do that. So what are the things that you can contribute to WordPress? What do you think you could contribute to WordPress? Any ideas?
Questions in that forum?
I'll let you.
Yeah?
I like your style.
Oh,
Yeah. Did you say something? No? Okay.
Testing of beta versions of the software just before it comes out
Yeah.
to make sure it's good enough quality and everybody.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Answer the questions.
Answering the questions, yeah. Answering the questions that Steve writes out, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So you've got a perfect feedback loop there.
Put some of those answers in the next version of the documentation.
Yes. See, you got know this stuff. You just be careful about not actually doing it. So, when someone says to me, I want to contribute to WordPress, but I don't know where to start, I always ask them first and foremost, what do you want to learn more about? Because ultimately, when you're volunteering, you need to get something back from it as well, whatever that is. For me personally, I am an extrovert. I like hanging out with people. And working in a company where I don't go to an office every day means that I basically spend my time in my office on my own all day, and it makes me really sad. So I solved this problem by going to meetups and hanging out with people outside of the office. So really think about what it is that you want to learn, or if there's an annoying feature in WordPress that you actually want to get fixed, or you would really like in, or you see an issue somewhere that bothers you about the WordPress community or the WordPress ecosystem. Things happen in WordPress because people get angry. That is as simple as that. We find something that really bugs us and then basically keep on like dealing with that problem until it is no longer an issue. There is a home for all contributions to the WordPress project. If you go to make.wordpress.org, you will see a list of teams where there are different ways of contributing, and each team does a particular thing. This is a non-comprehensive version of all the different teams that are in WordPress, and I say non-comprehensive because the list keeps growing all the time. So since we're in Glasgow and Heather's in the room, I'm going to embarrass her and tell you about the fact that we now have a privacy team in WordPress's open source project. And that is amazing work because one crazy lady was like, yeah, this is going to happen. Someone got angry, decided that this was a solution, and went for it. And that is how anything really happens in WordPress. And I'm very, very grateful that Heather and other people in Heather's team fly that flag and keep, all of us not having to think about it. There are other ways of contributing to WordPress as well that are not on here, but these are historically a lot of the small ones, so I'm just going to go through them. From the top with the paintbrush, we have themes. We also have, I'm going to go clockwise, we've got mobiles, marketing, WordPress TV. If you've never seen WordPress TV, go to wordpress.tv, lots and lots of videos from all the different events that happen across the UK, not the UK, across the globe. The two arrow things is code and core, which is the team that actually makes the software that we download. We've got plugins. At 5 o'clock we've got, kind of for 5 is, we've got training. So we actually have a team who are dedicated in writing training documentation to help improve the process of learning WordPress and different parts of WordPress. At 6 o'clock we've got documentation, so we mentioned documentation before. And then we've also got support, where people answer questions that other people ask questions in. And that's a big forum across the globe. We also have Meta, which is this one right here. And they look after everybody else. They look after the infrastructure of anything that's on WordPress.org and a few other projects as well. We also have the design team at 9 o'clock, accessibility, and polyglots, which is the translation team. So just in the list there, which is not everything, we're missing the hosting team, there's a security team, and obviously the privacy team as well, that's now new. Oh yeah, no, that's cool. I think all of us would be grateful for that. Where I tend to live and where you are right now is part of the community team. And even though WordPress is an online thing that you download, people are important. As people, we like to hang out with each other, share stories and share knowledge. So there's a rule in the WordPress community, which is 2 is company, 3 is a crowd, 4 is a party. And so if you didn't have a local meetup, we would recommend people to start a meetup, and it doesn't matter how big your meetup is. What we really care about as a community team is the quality of the relationships that are grown within that community. Because if you can share and support each other on your WordPress journey, then that's the best thing we could ever ask for. We don't ask for big events, we ask for events that actually people enjoy. That's an important asset to the WordPress community team. Now, all of you here have different experiences of WordPress. So one of the ways you can contribute to WordPress very quickly is to share your experience. There are people here who don't know answers, people who are asking questions, and sharing your experience allows other people to learn from your experience. You know, it's like mind that pothole, or when you tell your kids don't touch the flames, yet they do it anyway. It's things like that where you try and pre-warn people how to do something, help learn and teach from each other. And it means that we can learn from others what you don't know, because even I don't know everything. But it means that I can share with all of you what I do know, which is how to contribute back to WordPress. And the best thing I think about talking and speaking and even just standing here and sharing this information with you is that none of you can tell me that my experience of what I've gone through is wrong, because it's my experience. Your experience is individual to yourself, and that's why you don't need to worry about, oh, if this information is wrong, because it's what you have learned, it's what you have gathered information from. And so you're not saying this is the law, this is, you know, the rules, although unless you're talking about legal stuff, I guess that's true. Everywhere else, no one can tell you that your experience is wrong. If you did something in WordPress and there was a bug, and this is how you got out of that situation, then that's a story you can share with the rest of the group. And that's how you can help the organisers of this event to have content to share with other people. For me, meetups are kind of like a therapy class of how to help each other get through the world of WordPress. You could also help organise your local meetup. Meetups take time, effort, energy, and you know, different meetups across the world have different amounts of organisers. So helping local organisers have a break, come up with different ideas, even just telling them what you're interested in to learn about so they can go and find content that is relevant to the group is a way to help partake in our meetup. There are also WordCamps. So I've mentioned this before. WordCamps are a 1 day, 2 day, sometimes even a 3-day event, which is very similar like a meetup, but it's just scaled up. It's a scaled up version of a meetup. A lot of them have talks with them, some of them have what they call tribes, and they're like kind of sessions, and they might have, you know, happiness bars where you go along and you get your problems with WordPress fixed by other people who are contributing back that way. And so it's a great way to find new information out. There hasn't been a WordCamp Glasgow yet, but there has been a WordCamp Edinburgh. So if you ever got the opportunity and you like to volunteer and help shape the schedule of a WordCamp, then help organise your local WordCamps. There's a WordCamps up and down the country. There's also support. And support is one of my favourite things to do. Support really shows you how different people think and show you where you might have misunderstood the documentation or find out things are wrong. So there is the forums, which is at wordpress.org/support, where you can go in and ask questions about WordPress. And there are people there who contribute by replying to those questions. Now, as content writers and users of WordPress, you might be thinking, but I'm not a developer, I can't say how to fix it. But sometimes people are just asking the question, what plugin should I use? And you'll be surprised at the different types of questions you get. The thing about forums is that you don't need to know the full answer. Sometimes when someone says, I have found a problem, what they're really looking for is someone else to say, I have the same problem. To be able to triage a problem and say, yes, this is a problem, and here's another person who's managed to actually replicate that problem, means the original writer knows they're not going crazy. Because let's face it, we spend half our time going, did I really just manage to break WordPress? So that's always helpful as well. There's an online chat which is on a system called IRC. You go into it on freenode.net. And there's a WordPress channel in there where people ask questions as well. It's more like live chat, more like old school live chat. So if you're comfortable with IRC, that's another place. The UK community has a Slack team. It's called UK WordPress Community Slack. And you can get to it using this URL or wpchats.uk, I think it is. Where you can just sign up to the chat, and it's basically like glorified big MSN Messenger with lots of different rooms and people go and talk to each other. I'm not sure if there's a Glasgow channel. We can always make one if you want to make a Glasgow channel, so you can talk to people in this room whilst you're not in this room. Another one is polyglots. So how many people here speak another language? There's a handful of you. Cool. Not too sure. I went on the Polyglot website. It's translate.wordpress.org, and there's lots of different languages across the world that are being translated by volunteers into different languages, including, because WordPress by default is American English to British English, but there's also Scottish Gaelic in the list. And what's interesting on here is that you're not at, because it's TV, you're not at 100% translation for the latest version of WordPress. So if you know Gaelic, which I do not, there is a very small handful of people who are translating WordPress into Gaelic. So if you have, users who are, or you're creating websites for people who prefer to read in Gaelic, you can do that. It's just that only 74% has been written for that. So, hey, commit me. So, if you do know Gaelic or any other languages, go and have a look on translate.wordpress.org and you'll be able to see that. There's another initiative that the translation team are doing, which is to translate all plugins and themes into those languages as well. So it's not just WordPress core that we're trying to translate, we're also trying to translate the ecosystem of WordPress. And the long haul project is we translate all the things, like all the documentation to all the languages, which is a massive undertaking. But it means that more people can use WordPress. This is why WordPress is popular, because people can read documentation in their own languages. People can use WordPress in their own languages, and so that's important. So if you are blessed with the ability to speak more than, or write and read more than 2 languages, then this is a nice way of doing it as well. You just need to go to translate.wordpress.org and you'll see the comprehensive list of all the different languages there. And what's even more interesting is that if you have a local dialect which is similar to another one, you can request a new location to be created for that region and that area. What that means is that if you have words that don't match up to how other people use it, one example is German. They have formal German and informal German. So they have 2 versions of German. There is, I'm sure, about 10 versions of Spanish. If there is a version, if there's a locale and you can justify having a new locale, the Polyglot team actually are quite liberal about how many locales you do, and they will create a thing for you. What's really cool is if your locale is similar to another area and it's only a few words that you need to change, then they will duplicate the other locale, and so all you have to do is do the changes rather than everything from scratch. So Australian English is actually a duplication of British English, and then New Zealand is also English is also a duplication of British English as well. And so that's where they start from. So that way we don't try and have you rewrite the whole of WordPress's strings. You'll be able to edit the ones that actually make sense for your local area. There are other teams too that I showed you before, but really when I looked at the list and I thought about the fact that I was going to be talking to a group of non-developers who may not be comfortable looking at code, we're really thinking about job-based things that we can do in all those different teams. Because when I looked at all the different teams and thought, what can people who don't want to write code do for those teams? The answer was the same, and some of you have already mentioned some of those things, so we're just going to go through them. First of all, WordPress has issues. We know this, we work with WordPress, there are bugs. And so things that you can do to help is actually report the issues. Sometimes all it takes is to find if an issue that you have come across has been reported, report the issue itself. If you find that it has already been reported, tell and add to the list to say, this is also an issue for me. So it shows that this issue isn't just about one person's issue, but actually this issue is being replicated on other instances of WordPress. And the more information you can give about the setup of your WordPress system, the more likely a developer who does want to write code can actually track down the issue and see what the commonalities are. So by actually saying, I have this issue and I was using this piece of software on this hosting company with this setup, or with this browser, people can start trying to figure out what the issue is. If it's an issue that is new, that you can't see has been reported, then report the issue. Say, I have had an issue with whatever, and these are the steps that I have done to replicate this issue multiple times, so they can try and replicate that issue. So that's a very easy way of contributing to the project. It does take time. Not everything is, you can quickly write it in. So sometimes writing a good issue takes time. But if we have to put in the effort, then it's, put the effort in once is great. If you want, you can also triage. So just like hospitals and when you're doing businesses and trying to work out what's the most important thing, triaging is a thing that all teams need to do because they will all have issues that are assigned to them, and they need to really understand, is it really an issue, can it be replicated, and so on and so forth. So triaging new bugs, being able to try and just replicate someone else's bug that has been reported, is a thing that you can do. Testing that bug report. So before I was talking about writing that issue, now I'm talking about just reading someone else's issue and saying, can I do that on my computer as well? Is this something I can do? And if you can replicate it, you can say whether the bug has been replicated or not. If you can't duplicate it, then you could also write how you did these steps, and you're using this piece of software with this computer and this version of a browser, and how you can't replicate it. Because sometimes not being able to replicate something is also just as important as being able to replicate it as well, because it tells the people who want to write the code where not to look. And if you can see other people having the same solutions, then they can actually ignore that area. There's also triaging fixes. So there are people who like to write code, and they will submit what's known as a patch, which is basically like a plaster that will fix that issue in WordPress. But the thing about plasters and the thing about fixes is that people need to test them. So there are testing that happens as new new issues get fixed with patches, as they're known in the industry. People need to test those patches. Now this does require a little bit more tech savviness in terms of having to learn a few commands, but the community is writing better documentation on how to do this. And so that's really, really handy. When you do that, you can report if the potential fix did or did not work on your system. And that gives you, the community, more choices over whether to accept that patch or not. And it's not just about testing things as they're being fixed, but also at the very end stage when WordPress, the community, declares that we're about to ship a new version. We need the community to test things, and we're looking at beta releases. At that point, we also need people to be testing it against the data and the plugins and the themes that you're using, so that we can make sure that nothing major breaks when we actually roll it out. If I talk to core developers and people who are actually working on the software itself, and I ask them what it is that they would love to see more of, it would be testing WordPress before it gets shipped. The reality of it is too many of us trust other people to be testing this. And it's this complacency, which means that things that could be fixed ahead of time don't get fixed ahead of time. So if we all just tested it a little bit more, that would be great. There's also
That applies to
communication.
Microsoft as well.
Pardon?
That applies to Microsoft
Yes,
as well.
that applies
If
to
they
all
didn't change so
technology.
much.
Yes, that applies
Yeah,
to all
Test it on the
technology.
user.
All technology could learn a thing or two about just actually shipping better quality software and not having to run things. But that's another rant for another time. Maybe afterwards. Communication. So communication is hard. Me and you all in this room will all speak the same language is a bit easier. But Mo at the back is American. There are certain particular words, like yesterday when she talked to me about cilantro, that I didn't understand. Today I learned cilantro means coriander. She doesn't like coriander, just so you know. So when she was talking to me about cilantro, I was like, you don't like parsley, you don't like parsley. And she was like, no, cilantro. And I didn't really understand what it was. And it's just a proof that two people speaking English don't understand each other. Good luck with the rest of the world, where English is mostly their second language. And not only is that, me and Mo were talking next door to each other in the same vicinity, so we're like looking at body language and stuff like that. On the internet, we're talking about writing in text and reading people's responses in text form, which is even harder. So things that you can do, if you like writing or you have an eye for grammar or spelling mistakes, because I definitely am not that person, writing the tutorials that help other people learn how to use WordPress or how to solve a problem, like on support, is a way to contribute back to the project. We literally have teams who do this. The marketing team write marketing material for everyone to reuse. The training team literally write training material that any person can take, use themselves, or use it to create a training class for other people in their community. We literally have a documentation team whose sole job is to go through and write documentation of how things work. So if you're a little bit tech savvy, you can go through and read it. And if you're not tech savvy, you can go through and make sure the grammar is correct and the spellings are correct. Just a note, it is all American English, so you just have to learn to get used to that. I am really sorry. But sometimes the way things are worded, by having a fresh pair of eyes doing the editorial review, means that things can be worded clearer and be worded in such a way that makes internationalization a lot easier. When we're talking about WordPress, we're not talking about just American English, but we're talking about a language which everyone across the world can understand. And so sometimes what I have found is the people who are creating these features for WordPress, they're too knee-deep in the knowledge base that they forget basic information because they just assume everyone knows it. But the reality of it is that we're not telepathic, and so we need to ask them to write that documentation in. So reviewing documentation is a fantastic way of doing this. Another thing you can do is cheering on a ticket. If there is a particular bug or a particular thing which really affects you that you're passionate about, sometimes all it takes is to be a cheerleader, to every so often go back into that ticket and say, has there been any movement? Because people are busy, we are busy, and so sometimes people forget to do things. But by having someone who says, hey, how's this ticket going? It actually reminds people like, oh yeah, I was meant to do this, I need to submit something. So being a cheerleader of a ticket is a fantastic way to try and push particular things that you're passionate about through the WordPress project. Another thing you can do is write up meeting notes. That sounds really boring, and as far as I'm concerned, it is. And that's partly because I'm really bad at writing. I am definitely a bit of a talker, as I'm sure you have figured out by now, rather than a writer. And so when I run meetings, I actually find it really hard to condense the conversation into some meeting notes for people who haven't attended the meeting. And because we are a global community spanning the whole entire time zone across the world, meeting notes are very important in making sure everyone is up to date about what is happening in the project. So if you are really good at writing condensed meeting notes for everyone, that is a skill I wish I had, and please will you come to my meetings and write up my meeting notes. I would love you forever. And as I said before, writing any tutorials or even checking that the tutorials work, reviewing what people have written already and highlighting what's missing or what assumptions have been made is a very good way of doing this. So how? I've just given you a whole bunch of information about what you could be doing to contribute to WordPress without writing a single line of code. So how do you do this? Contributor days. Now, you could do this from home, or you can do it together. WordPress Glasgow are going to be doing their first contributor day on Saturday the 8th of September. If you go to wpglasgow.org/contributor day 2018, you'll find all the information there. South Block on the 8th. And ask the organisers here, they'll have more information than I do. I'm going to try and make it up so that I can cheer you all on and take on that challenge of any question or any subject. But yeah, you can do it in person. And I think, for me at least, doing it in person is a bit more fun because we all get to suffer together, which sounds like a bad thing, but actually is a great thing because that way you know you're not going crazy. If you do it from home or do it together as a group, the first thing you'll do as a group is go to make.wordpress.org. And as I said before, make.wordpress.org is the home of all contributions to WordPress really on our website. And you can just see in the background here, you've got these different teams and there's a long list of it, and this list is constantly growing. And so you basically find a team that you might be interested in, you click through to that team, so you pick a team, you click through to that team, and the very first thing you'll see is something that is known in the community as a P2. It's basically the code name for a theme, that's called P2, and what it does is have this kind of like blog area here where people write the latest information about that particular team and what meetings that have been going on. There are discussions in there which you can contribute to, comment on, and if you have a particular strong opinion about something, you can write it in there and say, no, I don't think this is a good idea. Yes, I do think this is a good idea. Have you considered this other solution? We have noticed X, Y, and Z. So you can contribute just by like partaking in the discussions with any information you have to give. But around that other page, you also have a section on sidebar which will have information about when they have meetings, and at the very top here there will be an overview of that team as well. So that's definitely a place to go and check out what's going on in that particular team. You'll want to look for a section called a handbook or get involved section, and in there every single team should have a page titled Getting Started at a Contributor Day. If there isn't that page or a similar titled page, then the first contribution you can do is to write that page out for that team, because sometimes someone just haven't had the time to write out that information. So once you kind of figure out how they work, you can write it down, and that's a contribution back to WordPress. In the accessibility team, it's somewhere down there, but sites change all the time, so it might have moved already. Another thing that happens is there's a global Slack channel, a global chatter channel, where you chat using text. And you can get onto that using chat.wordpress.org. And in there, they talk about every team has a channel, and that's where they will have their weekly or monthly meetings. Sometimes they're bi-weekly as well, so fortnightly. In the UK, do go to this URL and join the UK community Slack. So this is where we have people talking about things that are UK specific, or just UK people liking to have a banter about, I don't know, the rain, or the sun, or the lack of air conditioning, or all three things. Or whether tea or coffee is better. So yeah, come along. That's a place where you can also get help from local UK people. We also have what is known as a Rosetta site. So before I talked about polygons and translations, and every translation of WordPress has a site that is known as Rosetta. And the UK community has one for British English. And on there, you can see there's a section about news. So one of the organisers of this meetup actually wrote on here what was going on at their local meetup, and sometimes it's just about actually adding that information on here. And this is important because that information means that it comes out in different formats across the world and across the web. And that's handy because it means that there's more people and more ways for people to outreach into our community. There's also sections about translations, different meetups across the UK and events, and there's also a support section as well. So that's really it. I hope I have inspired you all to get contributing or thinking about contributing to WordPress. It's September the 8th, so you've got roughly 2 months, just over 2 months, to make your mind up. And I'll see you at your contributor day, hopefully. I'm going to check my diary and hope that I haven't scheduled into something else, because I will love any excuse to come back up here. But there are some things that I'd like you to remember when you're contributing. First and foremost, we are all part of the WordPress community. There is no one person who uses WordPress who is not part of the WordPress community. If you are using WordPress in any shape or form, or if you're thinking about using WordPress in any shape or form, you are already a part of the WordPress community. Alright? If you're not sure, ask. There is something amazing about people who don't know the answer because you have no assumptions in your head. By asking those questions, you're also questioning the assumptions that have been made that could potentially be assumptions that were made 10 years ago. So asking questions is a fantastic way to contribute back to the project, because it really makes us think about whether the way we're doing things is the correct way and whether we need to update the way we're doing things. So please, never stop asking questions. There is no such thing as a stupid question. Honestly, I will take it as a mentor to remember that. There is no such question as a stupid question. Now, I have mentioned multiple times that we are a global community, so don't forget time zone differences. Depending on where you're communicating, the responses may not be instant. We are talking about the internet here. People could be all over the world, and when you're writing a response, they might be asleep. So do keep that in mind, because we all have lives and we all need to eat and do other jobs and actually enjoy ourselves. Don't also forget cultural differences. It's an amazing thing that we all come from different cultures and different backgrounds, but it's also a double-edged sword in the fact that sometimes we just forget because we are in our nil world, and it's actually kind of nice to just remember that sometimes the way someone's writing something on the internet might not be their first language, so you have to give them a nil leeway on the way they're communicating. Sometimes just asking the question, did you mean this? And rewording a question is a great way to just double check that you're on the same page as the person you're talking to. So please do not forget cultural differences, because it is something that a lot of people do forget, myself included. We can all help build the WordPress project we love and sustain it, and most importantly, sustain it. WordPress has become super popular. We are now at least 31% of the web, which is an insane number and scares the living daylights out of me. But it's also really exciting. And as we keep on growing or decreasing in size and value, the most important thing is the sustainability of open source. So what I want you to leave with is a question of what it is that you want to do. I hope you all come along to the first WordPress Glasgow Contributor Day, and if you have any questions, now's a great time. Thank you.
Bigger than I thought.
Have we covered the questions here?
No, we haven't covered these questions, but I would just talk about Contribute Today. So particular questions about Contribute Today that we can go through first, and then we'll go through these ones. Yeah.
I thought what you done was great, but it just seemed a lot of jargon. Have you got one kind of page where just to sort of collect all that information?
All the different teams?
So you don't have it.
Do you mean all the different teams?
No, so, well, all the thing, for example, all that contribution information in one place, rather than having it seemed a bit split with different websites, domains. You know what I mean? It just maybe even a list of domains just to say this is for this, this is for that.
Or an infogram.
Yeah. I don't think at the moment there's anything, but we could work on something together.
Just a list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a list.
Yeah. I mean, I usually will post these slides online so you can just go through them again.
Should we ping the marketing team about that?
I think we should pick the marketing team about that.
Just collect all those URLs, because there are different subdomains and that, stick them in a list and go, you want that?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Heather's writing it there, so I will take a photo.
So
and make sure
this is very meta. There is a team you talk about called marketing, which make things like the list you want that we could then
See?
recycle for everybody.
If I had that list, I would have been looking for it now.
Yeah. So the idea of the marketing team is that they market all the other parts of WordPress however we want, and so, because they're better at writing words and decorating
They're
things.
really, really good.
They are really, really good.
Scary good.
So yeah, anything where you're like, hey, has this community got this? And we're like, no. We're like, but we know some people who can make this, so let's make them make this. Yeah, that's a great idea. I like it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, if somebody wanted to contribute to the code base, are there a few extra steps, like would they need a GitHub account? Do they need to know particular languages? Need a contribution to the code base?
So yeah, you would need a local installation of WordPress. If you go to the core team, actually have a really comprehensive list of, when you go to the Getting Started at Contribute Day, they actually break it down of the team structure. They actually break it down to how to install the stuff. If any of that bit of documentation is wrong or incorrect or doesn't work, contribute that issue back. But if it does work, that's how you do it. But yeah, that's where I would start. They tend to have a ticketing system, and on that ticketing system there is a label called Good First Bug. So if you're thinking about contributing to the code base, check out the Good First Bugs, because they have been labeled as issues that are not going to be too strenuous and don't send people down a rabbit hole, because there are many, many black holes and rabbit holes in WordPress, and we would not want it on new people especially to be contributing and then getting lost. We would like to keep you all happy for a little bit longer. Any other questions?
I think it's just a case of really sort of looking at the URLs you've given us and studying it on our own, because it's very in depth.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like, have a look at the URLs I've got. I will share these slides with the Glasgow organising team, so they can put them on. Yeah, they'll put them on the Meetup website so that you can get a copy, which also we should have to use that.
The other thing to consider as far as September the 8th is concerned is, don't imagine that you have to turn up on the September the 8th and you'll immediately be expected to be solving some problems all around the world. What the Contributor Day is about sitting together in small teams and actually walking you through how you get into that. And if you reach a point where you can actually say, well, yeah, we've got an answer to this, or we can fix that, or whatever, that's a bonus. But I went along to my first one thinking, you guys, I'm a real beginner at this. I don't know where I'm starting. And all we did was actually step through getting into Slack, getting into the right URL, and actually knowing where to actually go in. And it's like that first bug, and I answered a question. I answered a support question.
That's amazing.
And I went home happy, because that was great.
This was the list of all the teams.
Yeah, that was the list.
It was the list, and it's now outdated because I was a really, really, really stubborn cow about things for several years, and I've got my project now a permanent core team. So that's just, be stubborn and difficult. And
yeah. And this is the thing, like, treat this talk like it's the theory, and the contributor date on the September the 8th will be the practical, where people who have done this are going to come along, sit down with you, and like walk you through this, and we will find these issues together. I remember the second contributor day I went to was a contributor day that I actually arranged in Manchester for our local meetup, and we had no one from any part of the contribution teams of any other team. And I got an email that morning, and someone had asked all the teams across the world to write a list of how to get started with WordPress and start contributing. And our first job was to pick a team and see if the documentation, the bullet point list that they sent us, made sense, and that we could actually get online and get our system set up. And we literally just wrote, like in Google Docs, this doesn't work, I don't get it, and we had people online trying to help us fix what those issues are. And sometimes when you have a friend next to you trying to work it out together, you do some research and you find what the solution is, and then you just add that information into that documentation. And that's all we did. A group of 30 people in Manchester was like, all right, they've written all this getting started to contributing data. No one's actually tested it. We're going to test it.
So did everyone hear about what happened in Contributor Day in Belgrade 2 weeks ago? So it was what, probably 800 of us in one room, like a big class reunion. And of course, what happens when 800 people get in one room? The Wi-Fi died.
Wi-Fi goes.
So 800 people ready to turn up and contribute, and we had no Wi-Fi. So what did we do? We talked. Not only did we talk, but like the marketing team came over to my table, the UX team went over to the polyglots table, the accessibility team went over to the core table.
Yeah, I had the community team, and I was in the
3 hours later, we decided that was the best Wi-Fi outage ever, and next time we're going to trip the cord. That, in a way, was even more meaningful than staring at lines of code all day. We talked. We explained our projects. We learned what everyone else was doing, and we learned what we needed to do together once the Wi-Fi came up. By which point we were all kind of hot and tired and went to the pub anyway.
Yeah, but well, the things that we can do online, you know, sometimes it's just the planning that needs to happen, so you can get yourself set up and plan things while you're together, because it's sometimes easier to plan it in person, and then when you go away, you actually just do the actual heavy lifting later. And a lot of times that's why people go to these events.
Do you register in advance for this, or do you just turn up?
You register in advance for most of these.